Welcome to the GenX Experience, the podcast that celebrates the unique journey of 80s kids navigating midlife. I'm your host, Blythe Alperin. Each episode, my guests and I will share with you the unique differences that define our generation and how we are navigating those differences in the real world. Join me for laughs, insights, and a sense of community. Let's embrace the GenX Experience together. Welcome back to the GenX Experience, episode 29. We are continuing our series on ageism and how Gen X is facing it, dealing with it. Today, I have a really interesting conversation. While I was doing research for this topic, I stumbled across an article on LinkedIn written by our guest today, Craig Zamboni. It was really interesting. I will include a link to it in the show notes. It's entitled Ageism in the Workplace, a Growing Problem for Gen Xers. And Craig and I had a really engaging conversation about the challenges that Gen X faces and other generations as well. We talked about corporate culture, expectations, and what you can do to break free from those and try to navigate the system that we are all living in, which is so much fun. Before we get into my interview with Craig, let's learn a little bit more about him. Craig Zamboni is a consultant, a volunteer, a U.S. Army veteran, a Harvard graduate, and also a musician living in New York. He specializes in the integration of sustainable business models and AI technology to help build and scale forward-thinking enterprises focused on climate change, regenerative agriculture, water and energy nexus management, and space-based operations. So without further ado, let's get into my very interesting conversation with Craig. Hello there, Editing Blythe. As you can see, well, for those of you who can see, I'm wearing a different shirt. I just wanted to let you know there's a few little audio tech glitches on my end. I do less of the talking, so it's not so bad. But there's a little bit of echo in a couple spots. You'll notice the very beginning and a couple other spots. I did try to fix it as best I could in post and in editing, so it sounds a little better. But I just wanted to let you know, in case you're wondering, no, it's not you. I don't know what happened. There were some weird spots where when I was talking, it was showing my audio under my guest name. So I tried to fix that, but I apologize. It will not happen again. But, you know, tech will be teching. But I wanted to address it before we get into the episode. Welcome, Craig, to the Gen X Experience. Happy to have you here today to talk about the really fun topic of ageism, which is something, unfortunately, Gen X is dealing with. And I know you wrote an article for LinkedIn last year talking about it. What inspired you to write that article?
It was kind of personal, being that, I have over 20 years experience in a couple different industries, and pretty extensive education, background, leadership positions, high-level executive positions at Fortune 100 companies like General Electric, Ecolab, Suez Environmental, international business, where I ran international business units. So a lot of experience, educational background, a bachelor's science in biology and biochemistry, master's in astrophysics from APU, and another master's in sustainability from Harvard, plus 3 graduate certificates from Harvard, plus tons of executive business education certificates. So you figure you'd be pretty much at least in the top 5,
right?
For most positions that require like leadership positions. Applied over, I'd say over the last 3 years or so, over 3 years, I applied to over 3,500 positions, got 20 interviews, and 1 crappy job. So most of the time, I don't think they want somebody or somebody around our age span is easily weeded out. And basically what you can look for is experience. They look at your experience. They look at your pretty much your dates on your resume. But even then, you can, being that I hire people and that, I can figure out about how old they are just by reading their resume and what the language of that resume is. So even though they say they don't do that, that it's definitely, we want somebody of this age for this position. And being that we're 40s to 50s, why don't the reason is, why don't they want us? There's several reasons for that I've figured out by either working there or knowing human resources. And one of the main reasons is cost. They think we're more expensive than everybody. So somebody who has extensive experience, they figure,
should be paid more.
Well, I can get somebody a lot more inexpensive to do this position and train them. The other thing is that the hiring manager or the executive looks at your resume, sees you have a lot more experience than they do, and they have that fear that you could come in and take their job. And that's one of the other issues. But what I've seen arise over the last couple of years with a lot of people our age, and I'm different than a lot of people in that I'm very savvy on the tech side. I've made sure that I've educated myself on that. I actually partially own an AI company for that, and the GenX people don't embrace technology very well, and then that's another way that I can actually see that in their LinkedIn profiles, in their resumes, and everything from that extent. That they think they have one resume and that fits everything, and it really doesn't. Even when you have the perfect resume, you still have to overcome that bias of being older, being more experienced than probably the person who's hiring you. So the way I look at it is it's a very tough, once you get north of 40, 45, I think it becomes down to, you got about a 5% chance of knowing a job. So, I found it easier for me to get into Harvard than it was to actually get a job. So, it becomes a process. And, when you really look at the big picture, the hiring system has been broken for a long time.
And because you hear from people across the age ranges that, like, they'll send out hundreds and hundreds of resumes and hear nothing, or they'll go through like the process of, interviewing and then get ghosted. And it's like, what happened to common courtesy and professionalism?
And that is one of the biggest things that upsets me, is that you take the time to apply to a job and to fill one of their needs. Or you spend the time and effort to go to a series of many interviews, and then you don't even hear back from them. And to me, that is the ultimate insult, and I wouldn't want to work for somebody who does that. The only reason, and this is probably the reason I've started my own business, is because I got sick of it, and it's a game. And then once you're in there, if you do get hired, it's even, now you have a whole new set of obstacles to navigate once you get into a workplace. So, being a Gen X person, and I found where how do you utilize all this experience and everything? You're not going to get a job applying on job boards. Right. And a lot of us who are experienced and stuff are starting to almost like dumb their resumes down so they get picked for a position that they're, not overqualified for. And to me, that's like, that's kind of insulting to do that. You're taking a position that you're, 4 steps above, and, and they're expecting, you to do all this stuff that you would basically be teaching them how to do. So, I feel people that are our age with a lot of this experience, being a consultant and coming into those businesses, you're going to have a higher level of status and respect when you come in there than if you're going to come in as an employee to try to work your way up the corporate ladder at 40 years old. It's not going to happen. You'll be one of the first people squeezed out, no matter what your performance is.
Which is sad, because that's not, I mean, I remember in high school being told our generation would be the first to do worse than our parents, but nowhere were we told that, once you got enough experience and when the prime of your career, that you would be deemed too expensive, not adaptable, which I also find interesting, because I know you mentioned that Gen Xers not being tech savvy. And I find that interesting, maybe just because I am in advertising, so I had to adapt to a lot of tech and still am doing that as a business owner. Why do you think that there's people in our generation that aren't tech savvy when we had to learn computers, the internet, and phones, and all that has changed throughout our generation?
Because they got in their last position or where they were, they got comfortable. And a lot of them still have that status, that kind of slave mentality. I go in, I do my work, I did my job, I did what I was supposed to do, and I come in, work my hours, and I leave. When you look at that in anything, in any type of position, you have to go above and beyond now. You cannot just come in and do like what our parents did: come in, work 9 to 5, collect their retirement, take your 2 weeks vacation. There's some people that are cut from the cloth that can do. Personally, I can't do that. And I've been successful in a lot of positions, and I got fired for no reason in positions because I got fired for exceeding expectations at times. And the reason is they don't want you to rock the boat. They don't want you to come in and be creative. So yet they want you to learn all this other stuff and expect you to know that. So it's kind of a catch-22. You do too well, you threaten them. You do too little, you're not up to speed with where the business is going. So when people look, when you're looking to apply for jobs, the thing is, you gotta be able to network, and you have to go outside the job boards and outside LinkedIn. And you got to reach out to people in positions, people that are in the hiring authority, and network that way. Job boards are saturated. That's one reason. I mean, I do empathize with human resources in some way, that for one job, they're getting thousands of applications. There's no possible way you can read them all.
True.
So one of the other issues, I think, is these hiring manager, human resources, whoever writing these job descriptions, have no idea what they're asking for. So they're asking for a bunch of tasks and skills that a person has. But anybody can be trained to do anything. In my company, I don't have job descriptions. I hire people. I have an idea of what type of position I have. It's a management position. It's a programming position. It's an engineering position. But what I do is I interview people that I read through their stuff, and they might not even have a lot of experience in the field that we're in. But what I do is I look at it, I hire the person, and I create the job for the person. And I get 10 times more productivity out of that, instead of a job description with a bunch of boxes you have to check off. Oh, this person's missing 5 of these boxes, but 5 of those boxes really are irrelevant to the success of the position or what you need. So, and I think that what a lot of people try to do is they read the job description, they try to match everything that's on that job description. You could have a person that could write the perfect resume and be the most awful hire you've ever had.
Right.
So
yes.
They don't look at hiring the people anymore. They look at hiring somebody who is going to be obedient and just follow whatever's on that job description. So when you find that out, then that's with the wrong company. I mean, one of my friends, she went through 15 interviews to get a job. 15 interviews. It's outrageous. And extremely unhappy in her position. Unhappy, underappreciated. That's part of the other issues as well, is Gen Xers are not appreciated for what we do. We're looking at these people at the end of their career, they're just going to come and hang around and do nothing. And my last consulting job, I had an opportunity to work with 2 gentlemen in their mid 70s, And I saw extreme productivity out of that. I saw it was amazing to work with that generation. I never thought I'd have an opportunity to again. But taking the time to work with them is seeing what it used to be like and now what it's like now, because I also had some younger people in the same place that would kind of make fun of them and wouldn't take that time to pick their brains and understand the knowledge with them. So, and I think that's a problem with these companies is they look at the resume and they're like, what could this person bring? Look at all this experience. How can he help me? How can he help me get my job better? What can he teach me? Or what can she teach me? And they don't look at that. They look at, oh my God, this guy could come in and take my job. He knows more. I mean, I can't hire that person.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it definitely shows, which I don't think come as a surprise to Gen X, that our corporate culture is so broken that, I remember like you get into your job when you first start, right? You're all excited, and then you are introduced to corporate culture and you're like, nobody cares about work-life balance. Nobody cares, like you said, if you're doing a really good job, sometimes you're punished for that. If you're not doing enough, you're punished for that. Like it's very confusing. And then when you get to our age, which is late 40s, the oldest of us is 60, when you should be in your prime, you're being dismissed. And I do feel like there's also this culture war or this generational war going on where like younger generations don't want to learn from older generations, where I feel like, and maybe just in my house, I value older people who, adults who knew more than I did and could get knowledge from them. And I feel like that combination of this generational warfare and the broken corporate culture it's not doing very well for everybody, especially for Gen Xers.
But what you're also seeing in corporate culture is you're seeing the erosion of the corporate culture. And you saw this at the pandemic, is where people realized that once you got away from it, your life is much better. I mean, to me, starting up my own company, is very difficult to do. You have a 95% chance of failure. But I have more of a chance of succeeding with my own company than actually getting a job that I would be happy with. So why not bet on myself instead of bet on somebody else? And it's hard to do. Most people won't do it because it's scary. It's very scary. Most people don't like fear. It's not status quo. You don't know if you're going to get paid. You don't know if you're going to have enough money for this, or if this order is going to come in, or anything like that. But what's the difference between that and corporate America, where people are just getting fired for no reason, or your whole life, your benefits, your mortgage, your car, once they got you, they can do whatever they want to you. And, like, oh, you leave here if you don't do this, you don't take a pay cut, well, you're going to lose your house, your job, and they have that fear over people that they're afraid to go out and start their own thing because what if I fail? What if I fail? And when you're in a company, you could succeed and be the number one person, and one person doesn't like you and they squeeze you out. So the chances of you being successful on your own are probably higher than it is actually getting a job at our age. So the chance of you actually doing something, using all your experience and everything that you have and all your skills to benefit your company and your operation and run it the way that you want to, you have a much better shot than it is than keeping a job for 5 years that pays maybe $150,000, $200,000. And where I'm at in New Jersey, that's not a lot of money. So you might have to live lean for a little bit. You might not have the car that you want right away. You might not have the house that you want right away. But in the end, you have the business is yours. It's not somebody else's. So, and what you have is something that you can pass down to other people. You can run it the way you want. And that's how I hire people the way I want. I find a lot of issues with how corporate America hires people. I'm a disabled veteran myself. That's another thing that you have to check that box. So, whoa, what kind of disabilities do you have? Oh, he's crazy. He might have, and all these prejudices come up for a lot of these things with people. So I find people that are a little bit different but highly skilled get passed over as well. And it's sad to see that they don't actually look at the person and see that,
No.
hey, this person can really make a difference in our company. And over time, I think these companies are you're starting to see the rise of these startups and the rise of these smaller companies that are, a lot of them are Gen Xers.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, I utilize the younger generation to help me with things that I don't understand on the tech part, on the social media side and all that. I'm not afraid to hire somebody who knows more than me about something. And I think that I think that empowers you more so than having to have total control over something and say, this is the way I want it. When you don't have creativity, diversity, and thought in a company, I don't feel you have a company. I just feel you have an enterprise that's pushing out certain things for a period of time before somebody else comes up with something better, and you're done. So
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of talk about DEI, and it's very misunderstood. And the truth is, when you work at a company that has a diversity of backgrounds, skill sets, etc., you're better off because you have, yeah. And it's really sad to see companies jumping in line with getting rid of their DEI, people not understanding DEI, acting like it's only affirmative action. It's like that's just doing more harm to the country and to companies. And as a woman, like, DEI is the reason I can get, when I was working in corporate, I own my own business now, get jobs. The same with disabled veterans, is that people dismiss people before actually getting to know them or seeing if they're going to be a good fit for their company, regardless of what they look like. Or
exactly. And the way I look at it, I try to have the most diverse team that I have, where every single person contributes. Every person has an expertise or a skill in a certain area that they're really, really good at, and some people have a weakness in that area. So my teams, I try to get them all to work together, so all the strengths are pulled together and all the weaknesses are overcame with the strengths from the other areas. But they also teach each other in the process. Like, this person who was weak in marketing, the marketing person would work with them. The person who's weak in understanding technology, the technology people work with them. So they all understand what they do. Somebody gets sick, somebody leaves, something happens, I have somebody can come off the bench and step in, even if that's not their role. And I think what they want to do is in corporate America, they put everybody into silos, and they want everybody in a certain thing, and you can't step outside your box to help somebody else because that's not your job. And and people in corporate America start getting that mentality, like, oh, we need somebody to review these engineering specs. Well, that's not my job. I don't know how to do that. And in a startup and smaller companies, that's like, okay, well, I have to do that because I don't have anybody else to do it. And you learn more, and it creates more of a learning environment. And this is what you're seeing with these larger corporations, is they're actually buying up startups because they have no creativity. And the only way that they can bring creativity in a company is buy a smaller company that's creative, eat that company up, squash it up, and swallow it up into corporate America, where it just becomes another dead division in the company eventually. So what we're looking at is there's an ageism issue. There's a hiring, the hiring process is completely broken. But also the culture of the workplace in America has been broken for a long time. There's no teamwork. There's no loyalty. There's the friendships. Honestly, it's got to the point where I find it very difficult to trust anybody. And I've been stabbed in the back way too many times from people who I thought were my friends. You really don't have friends in the workplace anymore. And I learned that a long time ago, that I don't really deal with people outside the workplace. It's a way it's sad. It's sad because when my dad grew up, they were all friends. They hung out. We had picnics together, all his friends from work. We knew each other. It's not like that anymore.
no,
You don't know what they're going to gossip or say about you or do. It's just, it's sad. It really is.
Yeah.
I see this happen at company Christmas parties all the time. It's not a way to like celebrate what you guys did for the year. Everything. It's a way to get dirt on somebody sometimes. So,
Yeah, you don't trust people. I was at an agency once where one of the creative directors actually forced my creative director to leave. He was a jerk anyways. My creative director was awesome, but because he brought in outside stuff into the office that had nothing to do with it, and it was just like the last straw for her. And if nobody wants to go to a Christmas party or an office retreat if you're like, you can't have fun because you're just waiting to see who's going to like find out something about you and then go tell this person and go out, tell that person. And, um, the culture it's so broken, and younger people are struggling with it, but it's unfortunate that we're, as Gen Xers, getting caught up in it as well, even though I feel like we did try to change it a little bit. But after a while, when you work enough years, you're like, I can't fix this. And you just kind of either suck it up, do something else, start your own company, or you just put your head down and try to do the best you can.
Yeah. I mean, if you do dedicate 20, 30 years to a company and then you're just getting squeezed out, the hardship of trying to go back and work again and go back out there and try to get another job is unless you have a really good network, it's going to be very difficult. And I think what happens to a lot of us who come out there and, either lose a job or a company, whatever, however you get squeezed out, there's numerous ways that they get rid of you. When you do that and you go out there and you realize like, oh, I got all this experience, and you tell your family, I should have no problem. Everybody says, oh, you got all this experience, education, you should have no problem getting a job. They have no idea how friggin' hard it is, and how much. And if you don't have a network and you don't have an inside connection, you're not getting a job. You're going to apply, you're going to get frustrated, and then you're going to get desperate, and you're going to start applying for lower positions that you were 3 steps below you in your last job. And you're going to go there and you're going to basically trade your time for money and be even more miserable. So the way I look at it is, why not just bet on yourself? Bet on yourself and do what you can, because the chances of you succeeding are the same as it is in getting a job and succeeding and being happy in that job with that. Because companies know when you're desperate, and they will take advantage of you. They will. They'll lowball you. They'll make you work, do extra stuff. They'll give you extra jobs, and they will not promote you. They will promise you things that will never come to roost with that.
Because they have the mentality of you need them more than they need you. And so there's an imbalance that it's hard to overcome.
And they didn't learn their lesson in COVID, did they? Because when everybody wasn't there, or a lot of people quit after COVID, you'd figure that they would change things and say, wow, these people really weren't happy. Once they got away from the office, they realized that, this is bullcrap. This is just a game. It's like back in high school sometimes. You look at it, they have their cliques and everything. I mean, I belonged to a lot of companies that had the good old boys clubs. And that's why I work with a woman-owned company now, where the reason is because I saw this. I saw women get discriminated against, especially older women, and women coming in their 40s, women that came in were better than the guys that knew more. I have as many women mentors as I have men mentors, because I think women have a completely different perspective on business than guys do. It's completely different, and I think the world needs more women in business, in power positions, that have some sort of empathy. It's some cases where, it's not a boardroom full of testosterone, and where I had to sit in those things, and I just didn't like it. So I think the lack of diversity and all that, even though we tried over the last couple of years, it became more of a cliche and more of a box that needed to be checked than really actually helping somebody move up who deserved it. It was more of okay, well, we got this nationality, we got the veteran, we got this, we got that. Okay, we check these boxes. We don't have to hire anymore. Let's bring the rest of the good old boys in. And that's how it always has been.
Yeah, that's not what diversity DEI is supposed to be. It's supposed to give everyone a level playing field, not just a check a box. Because if you know that you're just a check box person, you're not going to feel comfortable at that company. You're going to always be, worried that you're going to lose your job, and that you're just there. That people know you're just there because you're a DEI hire.
And now they're looking, and now they're labeling a lot of these people. Oh, well, he didn't do good. That was a DEI hire. Yeah. And no, it wasn't. How do you know that?
Right.
Just because somebody's different or with that. So I find a lot of, and one of my goals in my company is to have a company that welcomes everybody. We do different types of work for disabled people. We're an assistive AI company. We have robotics that help disabled people. We have assistive robots that are therapy. They're very humanistic robots. And they counsel people and they work with people. So I look at hiring people that are on the spectrum as well, because that's what sort of inspiration for this company. And I think right there is another untapped resource that we don't see, that somebody's on the spectrum and they're a little bit different, but they have these amazing talents that nobody sees.
Yep.
And I see it. But everybody's, why would you hire that person? Oh my God, he's weird. She's weird. Maybe you're weird. Maybe they think you're weird. But I think when you really look, you got to really look at the person. There's good people, there's bad people, and there's average people. And corporate says, I'd rather have the average person. Just does what they're supposed to. And this has been the motto of corporate America for the last 25 years. They pay you just enough to stay, and you do just enough not to get fired.
Right, which is how we got, quiet quitting after the pandemic, because people were like, you're overworking me, underpaying me, and I'm just going to do enough to not get fired. And, and then now we have companies wanting people to come back to the office, which is really more economics, because they have this building that they have to
pay for office space they didn't need. I proposed remote working back in 2008 to a large company. And I was saying, why should they come here? I mean, she's worried about her daughter and all this. They're doing the same amount of work. Well, you have to keep an eye on them. You got to make sure they're doing this. I said, yeah, I can't give them the hall pass and the bathroom pass when they have to go to the bathroom. I said, they're adults. They don't, I'll know if they're doing their work. How will you know? I said, results. If the results are there, it doesn't matter where they work. If the results are there. So I did it without permission. And, I said, you can stay home Fridays and Mondays. You come in these days. And we were able to actually keep the office open longer. Some people came in at 10 in the morning. Some people came in at 6. But we were able to keep the office open until 8 o'clock and serve customers at 8 o'clock instead of 9 to 5. So we actually got more productivity out of it. But they did not like that. It was like, oh, that's just not how we do it. I said, you're getting 12 hours a day instead of 8. You're getting more productivity. The results, our sales are higher than they've ever been. So what's wrong with it? You didn't get my permission.
Well, and the thing too, like when you treat adults like children, we're going to act like children. And if you treat people like adults, they're going to act the way you want them to, and they're going to get their work done and have a life. And, because the thing with, like, I think is the problem too with the work-life balance, like which is not a thing, is you do need a life, because when you're from an advertising person, someone who worked in advertising, when I'm able to have a life, I can be more creative because I'm giving my brain a rest. I'm doing other things that feeds my creativity. The same with any job. If people need a rest and a break and to feel like they can be with their family, and then they have the time and the energy and the mind, the brain power to do their job. But I don't know if companies are ever going to get that.
Well, I think the weekend, you're so exhausted Friday. You get home, like I know people here working. I'm out in New York City. So people commuting to the city. Friday's horrible. You don't get home till 8:30, 9 o'clock. Saturday, you sleep in, you run errands, you do all your grocery shopping and all that, and get all that crap done. Come Sunday, you're all worried about what you got to do Monday, because they're already sending you emails on this needs to be done, where you got to go for this meeting, make sure you're prepared for this, so you don't even get to enjoy maybe Sunday dinner with your family. Come 3:30, 4 o'clock, you're already worried about what is due on Monday. Basically the same thing that you discussed Friday. And it just carries over to Monday. And what I realized is that as all these meetings and emails and all this crap that goes on in corporate America is people just trying to justify their existence in mediocrity, where absolutely nothing's getting done. my meetings, I like a half hour, 45 minutes at the longest. 45 minutes is like we have, something specific to discuss that has an outcome, and whoever's accountable for that outcome, we discuss, and that's it. But in the corporate America I was in, you would have a meeting Monday to discuss what you're going to discuss in the meeting Friday, and then Friday what you're going to discuss. And it was just basically what you're going to discuss in the next meeting is what you discuss in the meeting. So it was a never-ending hamster wheel of meetings that never went anywhere, and nothing ever got accomplished. And so I just stopped going. I pulled that. If you ever seen the movie Office Space, it's still relevant to this day. That movie is 20 some years old, yet it's still relevant to what goes on there today.
Yeah, I'm just not going to come in today. Yeah.
Yeah, so just going to start. You quitting? No, I'm just going to stop going. That's why I said to the meetings. Why? Because I'm not getting anything out of them. Why am I wasting my time going to something that means nothing and does nothing? So when you get somebody like me, I'm a rebel. They used to call me the lone wolf or whatever they used to call me, because I always challenge the status quo, and I never embraced the whatever the corporate message was at that time.
Which is what GenX is. We're supposed to be rebels, right?
And I was, because I would tell people the unpopular truth, and they don't like that. If you don't spill the narrative, and the narrative changes all the time to basically keep people happy and keep them brainwashed that everything you're doing is great and everything's wonderful and all this, when really the ship's sinking. Okay, you're on a Titanic, you see the water coming up through the channels and everything, and the bands starting to go underwater, but they're still playing because nothing's wrong.
Right. And
all of a sudden the bottom comes out and the ship sinks. And I've seen that happen in a lot of corporations because they don't listen to their people. They don't want to listen. They have an idea of what they want to do, and that's it. We've been doing it this way for years. And I think with any corporation, and even as being an employee, being a Gen Xer, you have to be flexible and you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to do that. And even when you have a job, you should always be looking for another one. And that's the best advice I can give anybody. As soon as you get a new job, start looking for another one.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And also, like, your network, connect to new people, stay in contact, form relationships, because your network can definitely help you if something.
Yeah, never tell anybody you're looking, but the people that that would know that you're looking, you just got a new job. I look at it this way: they're not loyal. They'll never be loyal to me. I'll never be loyal to them. And and this is what they've created. They expect you 100% loyalty to the company with 0% loyalty to the employee.
Yeah.
Oh, we give you a 401k, we match this, we give you health insurance, all this other stuff. Yeah, but I'm working for 50% less than what my value is. And when you pay people what they're worth and their value, and you get the right people in there for the right position, you have to hire the right people. You can't hire somebody based on a checklist. You can't. True. You got to know the person. Maybe the person only checks half the boxes. All that other stuff can be learned. And usually if they do have those skills, they did it with another company and they did it in a different situation or a different industry. And it kind of just doesn't apply to what you're doing right now, or technology has changed. I know computer programmers. Oh, the computer program. What language you know? Oh, COBOL and Fortran. Yeah, that was back in the 80s. That doesn't apply anymore. So no, you're not a programmer. So
right.
Having all that is, I think the value you bring is based on, what you can do as a person, but how you can take action and be an initiative. And when you do interview and say that, it scares them sometimes. So somebody like me that would go interview, I would say, I'd come in and do all this. This is what I think you're doing wrong. This is what I think you can fix. And ghost it after that. Because I tell them the truth. I can't lie. I can't. So I don't know any other advice to give people other than, you have to just, you gotta work with somebody that you gotta do what you love first. Make sure you go into a field that you love, because then you'll be successful. and start trying to do something on the side first. Try to start your own business. You can do that while you work, while you're miserable, while you're fulfilling your prison sentence, is what I always felt corporate America was, corporate prison. Wake up, go to work, you get a little yard time for lunch, go back to the cell, come home, drive, sleep in your cell, come back. It's the same thing over and over again. So if you can take that and you can take a passion of yours and make a business out of it, maybe part-time in the beginning, but then you can scale that business up to where it not only supplements your income, it becomes your income. And eventually you can walk away. And I think your chances are better at doing that than out there than trying to get another job.
Well, thank you. That I think we'll end on like that positive note, because it is. I mean, the subject is not exactly ageism is not like a happy subject to talk about, but I think you give a lot of great insight and advice, and I really appreciate it. If people want to reach out with you or connect with you, where is of course I'll include it in the show notes, but where's the best place that they can do so?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Is probably the best way to get a hold of me with that. I have my email addresses and everything is on there. I'm willing to work with people. I write great resumes. I can do all that stuff and get you the interviews and stuff. But on that point, it's up to the person, with what they want to do. So
that's very true.
My first step is make sure you do what you love, not what you have to do. So you'd be much happier.
Thank you, Craig. It's true. Do what you love. What is the saying? Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. Is that? I think that's
and you'll work into your 70s or 80s because you enjoy it. You have fun. I mean, I'm never going to retire. I never have any plans to retire because I like what I do. So,
but that should be a choice, right? Not like I have to keep working because.
No, but I just that's how I'm wired. I'll take time off and vacations and stuff, but I still like to do something. I have to have a purpose. If you have a life purpose, a life mission, make sure that your job is in that life mission as part of that.
Yeah, because otherwise you'll feel like you're in the Apple's 1984 commercial. Before the sledgehammer goes through the screen, you'll be sitting there. Yeah.
Trading your time for money. But if it's part of your life mission, it doesn't feel like that then, because you're doing something that has purpose and meaning.
Well, thank you so much. We'll end on that note. And I do appreciate you speaking with us today. Thank you again to Craig Zamboni for that really interesting discussion. I hope you guys learn something if you're a Gen Xer, which is who should be listening to this. But I hope you learn something, some tips and techniques for if you're struggling with ageism or getting a job to, look at your network, expand your network, be resilient, start your own business, even if it starts as a side gig. We're not done yet. We are, like I said, the oldest of us is 60. The youngest, I think, is 45. So we still have a lot to contribute, even though people forget about us all the time. We're quietly here. We're making a lot of difference. Some people just don't know it yet. So next week, you may hear from me again. We're going to go back in time and talk about the ageism that we face when you start your career. Because, we're Gen X. Apparently we face ageism when we start, like most people do, because you don't have experience. And then now that we're in our prime, we are facing it again. Thank you, corporate culture and technology. We'll look back at that. And just so you all know, we have some exciting topics coming up. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to do a siblings recording with my siblings. I'm going to talk to some only children, what it was like growing up Gen X with siblings versus only kids. We're going to revisit perimenopause and menopause later this year to see what we're all doing and what new is going on. If you have any suggestions for topics that you would like covered, please let me know. If you'd like to be a guest, in the show notes, and be sure to, you can tune in again, Spotify, Apple, and we do have a YouTube channel. And updates will always be in our Instagram, the Gen X Experience Pod. And thank you again to everyone listening. Very excited to see this podcast continue to grow and this community continue to grow. And with that, my fellow Gen Xers, I will end the show the way I always do. Don't you forget about me, because I will not forget about you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Gen X Experience. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it on social media or with a friend. We'll see you back here next time.